The price of ambition. 6 years later, he met his twin legacy warning. Get ready for a profound emotional shift. This is the story of a ruthless CEO who chose the bottom line over the heart, and the staggering consequence that showed him the true cost of his ambition. Before we dive in, smash that subscribe button and hit the like button. Your support makes these stories of redemption possible. 1. The verdict of the corner office. The last time Maya Wells saw Ethan Blackwood, she stood motionless in the doorway of his lavish penthouse while he meticulously buttoned his bespoke blazer, the San Francisco skyline shimmering behind him like something unattainable. Her lips trembled, trying to speak, but he was all ready walking away. Ethan, the youngest CEO in his firm's history, the golden boy of the tech world, didn't even look back as he spoke the words that would echo in her memory for years. Money matters more than a family with you. There was no fight, no conclusion, just those words, so sharp, so definitive. He didn't know she had come to tell him something that would change both their lives. He hadn't given her the chance. Only moments before, Maya had learned she was pregnant. She had held that knowledge in her heart as something delicate, not quite real. And now, she felt as if he had crushed it beneath his polished shoes, unaware it was even there. The door closed behind him with a sound too soft for how loudly it resonated in her chest. She stood still, her hand resting on her flat abdomen, yet to be something anyone could see. But she knew, and now she was alone. Utterly alone. The silence of the apartment was deafening. This was not how her life was supposed to go. When she met Ethan, she had been swept up in a whirlwind of charm, intelligence, ambition, and luxury. But somewhere between the private jets and the champagne dinners, she had started to feel invisible. He never talked about the future, not with her in it. Still, she didn't expect him to walk away so completely, so heartlessly. That night, Maya packed the few possessions she had in his home, just a few outfits and her well-worn shoes. She didn't cry as much as she expected. Something inside her had locked down. Some silent survival instinct was already taking over. By the time she stepped out into the cold city air, with her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, she wasn't the same woman. The girl who once dreamed of a fairy tale life with a brilliant man was gone. In her place was someone new, scared, yes, but also fierce in a way she didn't know she could be. She moved to a minuscule one-bedroom studio in a forgotten neighborhood on the edge of the city. No central heating, barely functional pipes, and the incessant sound of traffic. But it was hers. The morning sickness began soon after. She threw up between job interviews, during long walks to save on bus fare, and in the silence of her dark apartment, where the walls felt too close. But through it all, she whispered to the life growing inside her, a promise over and over. You are not alone. I'm still here. She landed a job answering phones at a dusty second-hand bookstore and spent her evenings taking online courses, hoping that if she worked hard enough, maybe, just maybe, she could give this child a life worth living. One night, lying on the lumpy mattress on the floor, she ran her hand over her belly and felt the faintest flutter. Movement, real and undeniable. That was the moment she realized. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something. Something that mattered more than all the power and wealth Ethan Blackwood had walked away from to protect. She wasn't just carrying a baby. She was carrying her future, and she was going to protect it with everything she had. Quick question for the audience. If you had just been told money matters more than family, would you have gone back and told him about the pregnancy anyway? Tell us your decision in the comments. 2. The Twin Rebellion. The twins arrived on a cold morning in early spring, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Maya had gone into labor alone, terrified, gripping the counter edge in her tiny kitchen as pain tore through her. She had no family nearby, no one waiting in the hospital lobby, just a worn travel bag and the quiet determination that had become her armor. In the hospital, the nurses were kind but busy, and no one asked if there was anyone they should call. Maya offered no names. There was no one to call. Hours later, she held two tiny girls in her arms, both swaddled in thin hospital blankets, their matching cries sharp, uncertain music in the sterile delivery room. Clara was born first, flushed and loud, with strong lungs and determined fists. Iris followed minutes later, quieter, blinking at the world with big, dark blue eyes that immediately reminded Maya of him. Both girls had wisps of blonde hair and the same dimpled chin that had once charmed half the financial district. They were unmistakably his, but now they were hers. Completely and absolutely. The early days blurred into sleepless nights, snatched meals, and an exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. Maya had never changed a diaper before. Now she changed dozens a day. The girls rarely slept at the same time. When one cried, the other stirred. When one finally quieted, the other fussed. Maya rocked them against her chest in the darkness, singing songs, whose lyrics she barely remembered, her voice raw from lack of sleep but steady with love. There were moments she broke down, once on the floor next to the bassinet, whispering apologies for not being enough, for not having more to give. But even in those moments, she never wished things were different. She never wished them away. They were her entire world. She returned to work after 8 weeks, not because she was ready, but because she had no other choice. Her boss at the bookstore allowed her to bring the girls for short shifts initially. Maya set up a small space behind the counter, with blankets and bottles, and while she answered phones and sorted inventory, her daughters slept beside her in donated bassinets. She nursed during lunch breaks and pumped milk in the bathroom. It wasn't sustainable, but it was survival, and she clung to it with both hands. By night, she studied for her early childhood education certification. Her laptop propped on the table edge, the girls in their second-hand crib just feet away. She listened to lectures on headphones while rocking Iris's chair with her foot. Every past exam felt like a small rebellion against the future people had assumed for her. She wasn't a statistic. She was building something better. They grew slowly but surely. Chubby cheeks, wobbling steps, first giggles. Clara was fearless and quick to anger. Iris was gentler, observant. Maya kept a small notebook where she jotted down milestones, even the quietest ones. She never posted photos online. She didn't want Ethan to see them. She didn't know if he even remembered her name, but the idea of him finding them was something she both feared and resented. He didn't deserve them, not after how easily he had discarded her. One afternoon, when the girls were almost 2, a stranger in the park commented on how much they looked like their father. Maya offered a strained smile and changed the subject. But that night, watching them sleep in the same crib, their blonde heads turned toward each other, she realized something had shifted. The fear was still there, but so was the pride. Her daughters were becoming something extraordinary, not despite their beginnings, but because of the fight she had poured into every minute of their lives. She kissed their foreheads and whispered again, "You are not alone. You never were." Then she sat by the window, looking out at the glittering city, wondering if fate would ever circle back, or if this was the life she had chosen to protect forever. Call to action. If you admire Maya's strength as a single mother, give this video a share and leave a comment about the hardest thing you fought for. 3. The the collision on the sidewalk, by the time Clara and Iris turned 5, their laughter filled every corner of their modest 2-bedroom apartment. The walls, once bare and peeling, were now covered with their artwork, rainbows of crayon colors, messy stick families, and hearts with "Mommy" scrawled backwards. Maya had done what many believed impossible. She had raised 2 brilliant, kind, beautiful little girls while holding down a job, earning her early childhood education certificate, and rebuilding herself one fragile day at a time. Her schedule was still grueling. She worked full-time as an assistant teacher at a local preschool, often arriving before dawn to set up crafts and snack time. The pay barely kept them afloat, and she supplemented it by offering weekend babysitting for some of the downtown families. Most afternoons, Maya returned home exhausted, but smiling, because the girls would run to the door, arms outstretched, clamoring over one another to tell her every tiny detail of their day. They were inseparable. Clara, bold and impulsive, always taking the lead, and Iris, more thoughtful, often pausing to observe the world around her before plunging in. Maya had long stopped needing recognition or applause. She didn't need it. The evidence of her strength lay in the way her daughters hugged their classmates, how they shared even their favorite snacks, and how they never ended a day without saying, "I love you," to each other, and to her. Still, there were moments that stung. Occasionally, other parents would ask where the girl's father was. Maya had perfected the art of the soft smile and the firm, "It's just us," and "We're doing great." She had promised herself never to let bitterness define her, but there were nights she would stare at the ceiling, wondering if he ever thought of them, if he would recognize his own eyes staring back at him through their blue. She doubted it. He had made his choice, and she had made hers, to never let his absence mean her daughters lacked love. It was a rainy Tuesday when everything began to shift. Maya had scored an interview for a program coordinator position at a new early education program across town. The salary was nearly double what she made now. It was a chance to finally move to a better neighborhood, maybe even save for the girls' future. She had chosen her best blouse, rehearsed her answers, and brought the twins with her. Unable to find childcare that afternoon, they wore matching white dresses with small blue flowers, their hair in neat braids. Despite the drizzle, they held hands and skipped down the sidewalk, giggling beneath a shared umbrella. As they rounded the corner to the office building, Maya's heart plummeted. On the steps of the lobby stood a man in a charcoal gray suit, his hair impeccably styled, his sharp eyes scanning his phone. Time hit her like a freight train. Ethan Blackwood. 6 years hadn't dulled the angles of his jaw or the presence he wore like armor. He looked as untouchable as ever, except now, her daughters stood between them. Clara tugged at her hand. "Mommy, that man is looking at us," she whispered. Maya didn't speak. She could feel Ethan's gaze move from her to the girls and back again. There was confusion on his face, then recognition, and finally, something she didn't expect. Awe. He took one hesitant step forward. Maya tensed. The moment stretched. The sound of the rain, the traffic, even her own breathing, seemed distant. Clara looked at him, tilting her head with that same curious lean Maya had seen in Iris. Iris, ever the observer, squinted. "Why does he look like us?" she asked out loud. Maya's throat tightened. She took their hands. "Come on!" She swept past him without a second glance, her head held high, her heart pounding, her pulse throbbing in her ears. Ethan turned slowly, watching them disappear down the sidewalk, the rain falling around him, his phone forgotten in his hand. And in that moment, Maya knew everything was about to change, whether she wanted it to or not. For the agony of the truth, Ethan couldn't sleep that night. The image of the two little girls, their blonde braids bouncing as they skipped past him, haunted his mind like an echo he couldn't silence. Their eyes were what struck him most. Deep, unmistakable blue, a mirror of his own. He knew before he even asked himself the question. Somehow, those girls were his. And the woman who led them with a face etched into his past like a scar, Maya, was the key to everything he never realized he had lost. He paced the penthouse that now felt too empty, too polished, too artificial. The silence pressed in, suffocating him. For years, he had surrounded himself with efficiency, precision, and success. His business had flourished, his company had gone public, his wealth had multiplied. But suddenly, none of it mattered. He couldn't stop hearing the youngest girl ask, "Why does he look like us?" That innocent question shattered him more than any lawsuit or market crash. By dawn, he had made a decision. He had to know the truth, and he had to hear it from her. He spent hours calling in favors, asking his personal assistant to find any trace of Maya. At first, there was nothing. No social media, no traceable employment history under her full name. But finally, a contact at the city's Department of Education flagged a preschool in the suburbs where a Maya Wells worked as an aide. Ethan didn't wait. He got in his car, canceled his meetings, and drove across town. The school was small and cheerful, with a mural of cartoon animals painted on the front. Children's laughter echoed from a fenced-in playground. He parked a few feet away and stayed frozen in the driver's seat, not knowing what to say or how to say it. What right did he have to show up now? What would she say when she saw him again? Maya had just walked outside with the children for recess when their eyes met again. She tensed, visibly rattled. Then she turned calmly to the teacher beside her and whispered something. The other woman nodded, taking charge of the class, and Maya walked toward the gate, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low but firm. There was no warmth, but no fear either. She had grown stronger, sharper. He barely recognized the girl he once walked away from. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his throat dry. "Please, you made your decision 6 years ago. I don't owe you anything now." "I didn't know," he said quickly, fixing his eyes on hers. "Maya, I swear to God I didn't know. I left before you said anything." "And if I had?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "Would it have made a difference? Or would you have called your lawyer to make me disappear?" He flinched. "I would have stayed," he said. "I think about that night all the time. I regret every word I said." She looked away, silent for a moment. "They are my entire world, Ethan. I didn't tell them about you because you weren't here. You don't get to come back now and pretend nothing happened." "I'm not pretending," he said quietly. I saw them, and I saw myself, and I realized I've spent 6 years chasing the wrong things." For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, with a weary sigh, she said, "I need time, and you still can't see them. If you are serious about this, about them, you'll have to prove it." "I will," Ethan said, his voice cracking. Maya nodded slowly and turned to walk back inside. As she walked away, he stood at the gate, watching the girls from a distance, playing on the swings. He saw Iris look up at him with curiosity. Clara was laughing, her hair flying in the wind. He felt the weight of 6 years fall onto his shoulders, and he knew this was only the beginning of what would be the hardest fight of his life, or the only one that truly mattered. Ethan has a long road ahead. Comment what you think his first act of genuine redemption should be and subscribe for the next chapter. The Long Road to Trust. The following weeks were some of the longest of Ethan's life. He wanted to rush in, to demand access, to talk to his daughters, to know who they were and what they loved. But he knew better now. He had forfeited the right to anything immediate. He had to win back something far harder than wealth or success: trust. Maya hadn't blocked him or disappeared. She hadn't filed a restraining order or sent lawyers his way. Instead, she gave him silence. A careful, watchful silence, waiting to see if he would follow through or fade away again, as he had before. So he started small. He asked the school administrator if he could anonymously sponsor supplies for Maya's classroom. A week later, new books, learning materials, and art supplies arrived, labeled only as donations. He didn't sign his name. Then he visited the foundation he had once donated to in passing and committed to funding a scholarship program for single working mothers returning to school. When the board asked if he wanted publicity, he declined. Every move he made now was silent, deliberate, rooted in sincerity, not performance. At home, his penthouse felt colder than ever. He had once filled it with expensive furniture, abstract art, and awards plaques that now seemed meaningless. He started clearing out entire rooms, packing away the reminders of the man he had been. He spent evenings researching parenting, early childhood development, how to build trust with children who had never known you. He contacted a child psychologist, not for the girls, but for himself. He wanted to be better, not just to be seen as better. Weeks bled into a month before Maya called him again. Her voice was cautious, almost clinical. But she didn't hang up. "If you're serious," she said, "you can meet them, but not as their father. Not yet. As my friend." Ethan understood. It wasn't punishment. It was a test, and he was determined not to fail. Their first meeting took place at the local library during weekend story time. Maya told the girls they were meeting a friend of hers from work. Ethan arrived early, dressed casually, with a bag of books he thought they might like. When they walked in, the girls paused at the sight of him. He held his breath. Clara immediately narrowed her eyes with suspicion, while Iris studied him silently, tilting her head slightly, much like Maya used to do when she was confused or curious. Maya introduced him as Mr. Ethan. He smiled softly and crouched to their level, not attempting to touch them, not forcing familiarity. "Did you bring books?" Iris asked. Her voice light but wary. "I did," he said. "One is about twin girls who go on an adventure to find a lost star." He thought it might be fun. Clara snatched the book and flipped through the pages. "Do you read with good voices?" she demanded. "I've been told I do," he said. With a small chuckle, Maya watched in silence, her hands clasped in her lap, every nerve in her body on alert. But Ethan kept his distance, responding to the girls with patience and calm. He didn't dominate the conversation. He let them lead. He listened. When the librarian called the group for story time, the girls asked Ethan to sit next to them. Maya held her breath, but allowed it. He sat on the floor with his long legs awkwardly crossed, sandwiched between their small elbows, as the story began. Afterward, they went for ice cream. Iris talked about her favorite books, and Clara debated about the best flavor. Ethan asked gentle questions, but never pushed. When it was time to leave, the girls waved goodbye without hesitation. That night, Maya called him. "You did well," she said. "Did they like me?" He closed his eyes, relief washing over him. "Thank you for giving me the chance. I don't trust easily," she said. "But they liked you. That matters more than how I feel." He wanted to tell her how much he still thought of her, how sorry he was. But he didn't. Not yet. This wasn't about him and her anymore. This was about two little girls who didn't know they had once been forgotten, and who deserved only the truth, the security, and the love they had never asked to earn. So he just said this: "Then I'll keep showing up, for as long as it takes." Interaction point. Maya is slowly letting Ethan back into their lives. What do you think is the biggest hurdle they still face, and why? Share your thoughts below. 6. The glitter and glue revelation. The weeks following their first meeting settled into a slow but steady rhythm. Ethan showed up at the library every Saturday morning without fail. Never late. Always carrying new books or small games for the girls to explore. Sometimes they sat together during story time. Other times, they spread out in the children's reading corner, building paper castles and pretending to be explorers or queens. The girls began to expect him. Clara no longer studied him like a stranger, and Iris no longer hesitated before sitting beside him. They laughed with him now, asked him silly questions, and even started to squabble over who would sit on his lap when they played pretend. Still, Ethan maintained a respectful distance with Maya. He never pushed her. He never spoke of the past, unless she brought it up. Outside of these library visits, he continued to change his life. He stepped back from the day-to-day control of his company, handing over leadership to his COO. He now knew that the empire he had built was empty with no one to share it with, and no number of zeros in his bank account could replace the years he had lost. He began volunteering through the single-parent initiative he had helped fund. He spent evenings reading to children in shelters and weekends visiting community events. Slowly, the brusqueness in his voice softened. His suit stayed in his closet more often. He started riding his bike instead of using a driver. He began eating at local diners instead of expensive rooftop lounges. People noticed. He was changing. Meanwhile, Maya watched it all with cautious hope. She remained wary, never wanting her daughters to become collateral damage in someone else's redemption arc. But she couldn't ignore what she saw. Ethan wasn't just showing up to impress. He wasn't seeking forgiveness. He was there because he loved them, loved the girls, and in a quiet way still felt something for Maya that time hadn't managed to erase. One afternoon, the library announced a family craft day. Maya hesitated to attend, nervous that being in such a space might blur the lines she had worked so hard to draw. But the girls begged, and Ethan had already said he would be there. So they went. The event was noisy and chaotic, with children darting between stations, glue sticks and glitter flying everywhere. Maya kept her distance at first, sipping a lukewarm coffee and watching as Ethan knelt beside the girls, helping them create messy crowns out of pipe cleaners and paper jewels. At one point, Clara accidentally glued her fingers together and began to cry in frustration. Ethan, instead of panicking, simply held out his hand and said, "I used to do that all the time. Do you want help, or do you want to do it yourself?" Clara sniffled, wiped her face on her sleeve, and nodded. "Together," she said. Maya watched from across the room, her heart full and aching all at once. Later that day, Maya found herself sitting next to Ethan on a bench as the girls played tag in the nearby park. The sun was low, casting long shadows, and for a moment it was just the two of them. In silence. "You're good with them," she said. Surprising herself, he looked at her, smiling softly. "They make it easy. They're incredible." "They are, but they're also intense, stubborn, loud. They have their own rules for everything that they got from you," he said gently. Maya laughed, a sound she hadn't shared with him in years. It felt strange and familiar all at once. "I was angry for a long time," she admitted. "Still am sometimes. But I see what you're doing. I see how you've changed, and I think they need you. Not just someone who visits once a week. They need a real father." Ethan's expression shifted. Relief, hope, fear, all at once. "I don't know how to do that," he said. "I've read the books. I've asked for advice, But every day I wake up terrified I'll mess it up. Maya nodded slowly. That means you're already doing better than most. They sat in silence again, as the girls ran in circles, their laughter echoing through the trees. Later, as they walked home, Clara took Ethan's hand without hesitation. Iris followed a second later. Maya walked behind them, watching the three of them together. The shape of a family forming, not through perfection, but through presence. It wasn't how she had once imagined it. It was slower, messier, quieter. But it was real. That night, after the girls were tucked into bed and the apartment was quiet, Maya stood by the window, looking at the stars. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was doing it all alone. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that this story might yet end in joy. Ethan is one step closer to redemption. Subscribe to see what happens next, and tell us in the comments if you think Maya will ever truly forgive him. The unspoken truth becomes spoken. The family craft day at the library was the first time Maya allowed herself to genuinely relax in Ethan's presence, though even she didn't realize it until much later. The event was simple, but it showcased Ethan's transformation. By the time an hour passed, Maya found herself laughing freely, her hands sticky with glue, while Ethan had streaks of purple marker on his shirt sleeve. Both girls wore lopsided crowns they had made together, utterly oblivious to the years that had passed. Later that day, Jane found herself sitting next to Adam on a bench as the girls played tag in the nearby park. The sun was low, casting long shadows, and for a moment, it was just the two of them. In silence, the relationship between them began to shift from a fragile truce to a careful coexistence. Ethan started coming over in the mornings, helping make lunches, and walking the girls to school with Maya. They coordinated schedules, discussed future plans, and began having family dinners every Sunday. The girls thrived. They started calling him Daddy without hesitation. And slowly, so slowly, it was almost imperceptible, Maya began to let him into the parts of her heart she had kept barricaded for so long. There was no fairy tale ending. There was no grand wedding or dramatic proposal. But there was peace. There was trust. There was love being rebuilt not on apologies, but on presence and patience. One Sunday morning, Maya was folding laundry in the girls' room when she overheard them whispering. "Do you think he's our real daddy?" Iris asked softly. Clara hesitated. "I think so. He looks like us, and he remembers all our favorite things. And if Mommy didn't want him to be, he wouldn't be here. I think she loves him. She just forgot for a while." Maya froze. A knot tightened in her throat. She hadn't told them yet. Not because she was afraid, but because she wanted it to be built on solid ground. Because she wanted them to know their father not as a title, but as a man who stayed. A man who earned it. A man who never walked away again. She didn't enter the room then. She let them have that conversation privately. But that night, after dinner, she called Ethan and asked him to come over. When he arrived, the girls were already in their pajamas, snuggled under a blanket on the sofa. Maya sat on the floor in front of them, cross-legged, and patted the space beside her. Ethan sat down. There was no ceremony, no script, just the raw truth. "Girls," she said gently, "we've talked before about families, about how some families look different, right? Some have one parent, some have two." The girls nodded. "Well," Maya continued, her voice steady but warm, "there's something important I need to tell you. Mr. Ethan isn't just a friend. He's your daddy." There was a long pause. No one spoke. The air filled with the pulse of something sacred, something that had waited years to be said. Then Clara leaned forward, looking Ethan in the eye. "I knew it," she said. Iris looked between them, her voice barely a whisper. You're our real daddy." Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at Maya, who gave him a small nod, and then turned back to them. "Yes, I am," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I am so sorry I wasn't here sooner. I didn't know. But I'm here now, and I will never leave you again." The girls didn't say anything for a moment. Then, slowly, Iris got up, walked over, and wrapped her small arms around his neck. Clara followed, pressing her face against his shoulder. Ethan hugged them both, closing his eyes, breathing in the moment he never thought he would be allowed to have. He didn't cry. Not there. Not then. But later, after they had gone to bed, Maya found him sitting on the front steps, wiping his face on his jacket sleeve. She sat beside him. For a while they said nothing. "Thank you," he said finally. "I didn't do it for you," she replied, but her voice held no sternness. "I did it because they deserve the truth, and because you showed me I could trust you with it. I want to be a real part of their lives," he said. "Not just weekends and birthdays. I want to be here in the mornings. I want to read bedtime stories and help with homework. I want to share this with you." Maya looked at him, the man who had once walked away from everything and had returned not with excuses, but with actions. "Then you better be ready," she said, "because this is the hard part." "I'm ready." 8. The hard-won home. Over the next few weeks, Ethan started coming over in the mornings, helping make lunches and walking the girls to school with Maya. They coordinated schedules, discussed future plans, and began having family dinners every Sunday. The girls flourished. They started calling him Dad without hesitation. And slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, Maya began to let him into the parts of her heart she had kept barricaded for so long. One night, while Maya was putting the girls to bed and turning out the lights, she found Ethan waiting for her in the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea. She took hers and sat beside him on the sofa. He didn't say anything, just took her hand. And this time, she didn't pull away. "This is not a perfect story," she whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. "No," he agreed. "It's better than perfect. It's real." This story is a powerful reminder that redemption doesn't come in grand gestures, but in constant stillness, in showing up day after day when no one asks you to. Ethan's journey from selfish ambition to fatherhood wasn't instantaneous, and that is what made it real. Maya's strength lay not just in surviving alone, but in knowing when to open her heart again. Not for her, but for her daughters. The ending feels earned, not gifted as a reward. It's not a perfect fairy tale, but something far more meaningful. A second chance built on truth, trust, and time. And sometimes, that is the happiest ending of all. The ultimate legacy of Ethan Blackwood was not his wealth, but the simple, unshakable joy of being present. He traded the highest title for the most meaningful one, Daddy. His story proves that true success is not about ambition without end, but finding the courage to stay and build the foundation you once abandoned. If you believe that the hardest won love is the strongest, leave a comment below and share this video. 9. Epilogue. The unwavering balance. The following year passed in a beautiful rhythm of consistency and commitment. Ethan and Maya hadn't remarried or moved in together right away. Instead, they spent months cultivating their relationship with the same meticulous care Ethan once reserved for his business portfolio. They had real dates, talking not just about the girls' school or the park, but about their own dreams. The dreams they had buried when their worlds separated. Ethan formally resigned as CEO, taking on a chief strategist role that allowed him to set his own schedule and work remotely from their home base in San Francisco. He gave up the constant pressure and incessant travel that had nearly cost him everything once. His decision to choose family over the top title was the final, definitive act of redemption. One evening, after the girls were asleep, Ethan found Maya waiting for him in the kitchen with a cup of tea. She handed him the cup and sat beside him on the sofa. He didn't say anything, just took her hand. And this time, she didn't pull away. "This isn't a perfect story," she whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. "No," he agreed. "It's better than perfect. It's real." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "I sold the penthouse. I'm buying a house closer to the school, big enough for all of us, but with a backyard for the girls. I've already set up the trust funds, not to make up for the past, but to secure their future." Maya turned and looked at him. There was no arrogance in his actions, only the quiet certainty of a man who knew his true priorities. "I love you, Ethan," she said, her voice filled with a depth of feeling he had earned. "I love you, Maya," he replied, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Thank you for teaching me that the greatest empire is the one built on love, not profit." He didn't make a grand, romantic promise about their future, because they were past that. Instead, he simply promised, "I will be here, every day, for everything." They eventually moved into the new house, a comfortable, warm space filled with Lily and Clara's laughter. Ethan's true legacy was not his wealth, but the simple, unshakable joy of being present. He traded the highest title for the most meaningful one, Daddy. His story is a powerful reminder that redemption doesn't come in grand gestures, but in constant stillness, in showing up day after day when no one asks you to. The love he and Maya rebuilt was the strongest kind, one that was tested by loss, forged in fire, and preserved by patience. The ultimate triumph of Ethan Blackwood was finding the courage to stay and build the foundation he once abandoned. If you believe that the hardest won love is the strongest, leave a comment below and share this video.